Hi, I'm DudeTheNinja. At least, I've been DudeTheNinja for the past 10 years, give or take. And yet, I have only recently settled on an actual original character design to fit that name. One that I do not feel needs any further changes or tweaks for a good while. But how did we get here? It's a long story. Okay, it's not actually that long. It's only about 300 words. However, I don't care. You're going to listen to this story, whether you like it or not. Originally, before the name DudeTheNinja stuck, my avatar online was what I called a Lego stickman, a leftover from my brief 2-year hyperfixation on the game Lego Universe. I called him Dude, hence DudeTheNinja. On the left, I've drawn a reinterpretation of the design in my more modern style, and on the right, an illustration of how he looked as a pixel sprite I made in Flipnote Studio. I think I made him very short as a result of being essentially just Lego. So no, he could not solo Goku. As a result, in an evolution of my art style, the Lego traits slowly faded, so he slowly became just a stick figure. The stud on the head wasn't represented in 2D art I made at the time, but it remained in 3D forms, such as old Minecraft skins I made, because otherwise the top of the head just looked weird and flat. Here's a reimagining of how he'd look in my modern art style. Representing Dude in TF2 was a bit tricky back when I was a newbie to modding, so I slapped the beat man on the sniper and called it a day. After a while, I realised he looked a bit like a robot, so I decided to kit bash together the sniper robot and the beat man, with the sniper play model being used to give him actual clothes. And so, Classic Man came to be. The name came from a joke alias, that being Classic Man Ninja. Over the years, I iterated upon and upgraded the Classic Man model, fixing issues with clipping and UVs in certain spaces, and most recently, last year I gave him facial flexes that are cartoony and more expressive than the vanilla Beat Man's to try and stand out a little bit more than just Beat Man with sniper robot body. However, this didn't really sit right with me. My identity over the past decade has primarily been the Beat Man, which was someone else's work, and also their main mascot on most media platforms. So, a couple of years ago, I decided to get to work on a completely original design. I kept the whole robot with square monitor head concept, but tried bringing back a smidge of the stick figure era. This was done by making the arms being telescopic ones made of a dark metal, kinda like the sort you see on old cartoon robots, and also shower hoses. I also slapped some formal clothes on because I wanted a sort of pre-war gentlemanly aspect, trying to shoehorn in my special interest in trains. I whipped up a low poly 3D model for it, and that was my profile picture for a good while. I then made some minor changes, such as trashing the waistcoat and the tattered trousers for a tie and cargo shorts, and most recently last year, reworked the colour palette to be solely red, instead of having a mess of reds, blues and greys that didn't really mesh well together. And that's the story of Ninja. Now to model him. The following footage was recorded over a couple of days and is sped up time-lapse style. I start by plonking the model sheet in Blender as a textured plane, with its scale matching up to a box with the height I put on the model sheet. When drawing, I tend to go head first, and when 3D modelling, I tend to do the exact same, with getting the head proportions right. Fortunately, Ninja originates from a specific manufacturer that at least one other of my original characters hails from, so I just nick their head and move it so it's in the right position to fit the reference sheet, which made the imported head turn out to be smaller than I thought by about 1.14 times. So I resized it here, and since I'm writing the script for this video, I've essentially written a to-do note to fix this on the other character's model. I also forgot to use the right version of the reference sheet for modelling the body underneath the clothes, so that it's easier to model the clothes later. So we'll switch that round off camera and pretend like I used the right one the entire time. For the torso, I start off with just a couple of cubes that I morph in order to match the shape of the reference sheet. I make some tweaks to ensure it's a bit more rigid and boxy to try and ensure Ninja looks a bit different to the existing character, whose shape is rather slender and natural looking despite the angular nature. Making the arms and hands is a bit trickier. I initially tried importing an existing work-in-progress hand I made, because you only need to model a hand once, and then reuse it every time you model something that requires a hand. Unfortunately, it looked a bit horrendous, so I decided to make one from scratch. One cube for the palm, make another for a mitten hand, split it up to get some fingers, add a thumb to a side, and you're done. The only problem is making the transition from hand to arm look good when you've got a blocky robot hand connecting to a cylindrical, noodly telescopic arm. Natural humanoid arms can be abstracted to a cheese wedge sort of shape, but you can't really do that with Ninja's arms. Natural humanoid arms can be abstracted to a cheese wedge sort of shape, but you can't really do that with Ninja's arms. His arms resemble a horizontally flattened marshmallow on a stick. With certain robot designs, you can get away with the whole making a wrist thing by giving them a ball joint, and it looks fine. I've done this before on some robot characters, particularly more feminine ones, where doll joints are bread and butter for making something cutesy. However, I wanted Ninja to have a more classic cartoon robot design. Think something like Robot Jones, Gear, or Bender, but with normal hands at the end. Unfortunately, there's no real good examples I can think of where this is done in 3D. I ended up just giving up and shrinking the arms as they go closer to the hand like in real life, which I guess works. After that, it's a matter of making exactly 7 cuts in the arms, then beveling those to make extra geometry, then insetting that extra geometry to make the little notches in the arms. I do the same with the legs, and the feet are just a slightly morphed pentagonal prism. Then, Ninja's base body is done. Normally, once I finish modelling, I go into rigging before I get into texturing. I do this in case I need to edit the model at all, in order to make skeletal animation look nice on it, so I don't have to then re-unwrap and retexture the areas I had to change. As a result, it's easier to do the rigging first and then the unwrapping. Unwrapping's kind of boring, so I decided to not record it. After unwrapping, I bake the ambient occlusion, which I use for a basic shading of the whole model. Then, I make a separate texture in the Blender texture paint mode. There's just a flat block out of the colours that I'm going to later paint over. Following that, I paint the texture in Critter. I did this on stream. I plan on streaming more now, because I have nothing better to do. Rather than stick the footage here, if you want to see that stuff in all its uncut glory, please divert your attention to the live section of my channel to view past streams. Hey, don't come back, I haven't finished. You can do that afterwards. I also did the clothing on stream. It was the same sort of process, just I didn't need to slave away at edge wear because Ninja's clothes aren't metal. I did, however, have to slave away at dirtying up his clothes. Following this, I did what I like to call off-camera mining. That is, any additional tweaks that I neglect to record for whatever reason. This sort of stuff includes minor proportion tweaks, fixing the auto-generated Rigify rig, and testing him with some other models. I realised he's a bit too tall when put up against other original characters I've modelled, so I shrunk him down a smidge. After that, I consider myself ready to call this model complete. I currently don't have a download for this model available, but in the next week or two after this video goes up, I'll probably just pop a link in the description and also announce it in a community post. This video took a bit longer to get around to finishing than I expected, but hey, it's out. I hope you enjoyed it, even if it's a little bit low energy in places. I do want to gush about my original characters and their designs more, so if you like the beginning storytime bit, do let me know, as some characters have a bit of a story behind their designs that I would think would be quite fun to tell. Thank you for all the love on the Sabrina video. Of course it's a TF2 video, so it's gonna do well in the algorithm, but I didn't expect it to do that well. Since then I've received a fair bit of fan art of her, which I am very grateful of, obviously. Since the video's release, I have updated the mod as I said I would, adding HUD elements, some refinements to the UVs, some better and more expressive face flexes, and a summer-themed outfit that got a bunch of likes on Twitter. The Source Filmmaker and Gary's mod ports are equally up-to-date feature-wise. In the meantime, I have started working on a longer term project, that being a Source Engine map featuring a bunch of things I've made, like a personal digital museum or art gallery or like an interactive portfolio. Now that this video is finally out, I can lock in on making that without having to worry about other projects on my plate. I'll probably stream development as often as I can, in the evenings around 10 PM London time, so if that's the time where you're awake, come and stop by. I'd also like to give some additional special thanks to the people on screen who either kept me sane by providing videos for me to have playing in the background as very good, pleasant background noise, kept me sane while I was streaming by showing up and chatting to make it less lonely, or financially supporting me through commissions since the last upload. You're all awesome. Okay, bye for real now. Have the obligatory random clip that will get covered by end cards anyway.
It's gonna be great. Ooh, I'm about to make a name for myself here. You know how long I've been waiting for this?
Zigzag? I might need you to revive me. Look where I am.
I don't know where you are. I can't find your name.
Right behind you.
Ah!